This is 10 Minutes Exploration. In this video, we will try to give you a comprehensive overview of the Israel-Palestine conflict, one of the most complex and long-lasting conflicts in the world. We have divided this conflict into two videos. In the first video, we will cover the following topics: the historical background of the conflict, from the late 19th century to the present day; the main issues and grievances that fuel the conflict, such as land, borders, refugees, security, Jerusalem, and recognition. And in the second video, we will cover the current situation and challenges, including the recent escalation of violence, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, the political deadlock, and the role of regional and international actors. The possible ways forward and prospects for peace, based on different perspectives and proposals. Before we begin, we want to make it clear that this video is not intended to take sides or promote any particular agenda. Our goal is to provide you with factual information and analysis from various sources, and to help you understand the different viewpoints and narratives that exist on this topic. We will also try to be as balanced and objective as possible, but we acknowledge that there may be some limitations and biases in our presentation. Therefore, we encourage you to do your own research and form your own opinions after watching this video. Let's start with some historical background. The origins of the Israel-Palestine conflict can be traced back to the late 19th century, when Zionism emerged as a nationalist movement among Jews in Europe who sought to establish a homeland for their people in Ottoman-controlled Palestine. At the same time, Arab nationalism also developed as a response to Ottoman oppression and European colonialism in the Middle East. Both movements claimed historical and religious ties to the land of Palestine, which was inhabited by a majority of Arab Muslims and Christians, as well as a minority of Jews. In 1917, during World War I, the British government issued the Balfour Declaration, which expressed support for the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. This declaration encouraged more Jewish immigration to Palestine, which led to increased tensions and conflicts with the Arab population. After the war, Britain obtained a mandate from the League of Nations to administer Palestine until it was ready for independence. However, Britain failed to fulfill its promises to both Jews and Arabs, and faced growing resistance from both sides. In 1947, after World War II and the Holocaust, the United Nations proposed a partition plan that would divide Palestine into two states, one Jewish and one Arab. The plan was accepted by the Jewish leadership but rejected by the Arab leadership. As a result, a civil war broke out between Jewish and Arab militias in Palestine. In 1948, Israel declared its independence as a Jewish state, which triggered an invasion by neighboring Arab countries. The First Arab-Israeli War ended with an armistice agreement in 1949 that established new borders for Israel that gave it more territory than it was awarded under the UN partition plan. The war also resulted in the displacement of about 700,000 Palestinians who became refugees in neighboring countries or within Israel itself. These refugees were never allowed to return to their homes or lands by Israel, which claimed them as part of its state. The Palestinians call this event the Nakba, or catastrophe, which remains a core issue of their national identity and struggle. In 1964, a coalition of Palestinian groups founded the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, under the leadership of Yasser Arafat. The PLO sought to liberate Palestine from Israeli occupation and establish an independent Palestinian state through armed struggle and diplomacy. In 1967, Israel launched a preemptive attack on Egypt, Syria, and Jordan in what became known as the Six-Day War. Israel captured several territories from these countries, including the West Bank and East Jerusalem from Jordan, the Gaza Strip and Sinai Peninsula from Egypt, and the Golan Heights from Syria. The occupation of these territories by Israel brought about 1.3 million Palestinians under its direct control. Israel also began to build settlements in these territories that were considered illegal by most of the international community. The UN Security Council passed Resolution 242 that called for Israel to withdraw from these territories in exchange for peace with its neighbors. However, this resolution was never implemented. The Israel-Palestine conflict involves several interrelated and overlapping issues that have been the source of dispute and violence for decades. These include land and borders. Both sides claim historical and religious rights to the land of Palestine, which has been divided and occupied by different powers over the centuries. The borders of Israel and Palestine have changed several times as a result of wars and agreements, but none have been accepted by both parties as final and legitimate. The Palestinians demand an end to the Israeli occupation of the West Bank and Gaza Strip and the establishment of a sovereign and contiguous state within the 1967 borders, with minor adjustments based on mutual land swaps. The Israelis insist on maintaining their security and strategic interests and retaining control over some of the occupied territories, especially those with large Jewish settlements. The Israelis also reject the idea of dividing Jerusalem, which they consider their eternal and undivided capital, while the Palestinians claim East Jerusalem as their capital. Refugees. The Palestinian refugees are the descendants of those who fled or were expelled from their homes during the 1948 war and subsequent conflicts. They number about 5.6 million, according to the UN Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, which provides them with humanitarian assistance in camps and host countries. The Palestinians demand that the refugees be allowed to return to their original homes or lands, or be compensated for their losses, in accordance with UN General Assembly Resolution 194 of 1948, which affirms their right of return. The Israelis argue that the return of millions of refugees would threaten the Jewish character and demographic balance of their state, and that they are not responsible for their plight, which was caused by the Arab rejection of the partition plan and invasion of Israel in 1948. The Israelis also question the validity and accuracy of UNRWA's definition and registration of refugees, which includes not only those who were personally displaced, but also their descendants. Security. Both sides face serious security threats from each other and from other actors in the region. The Israelis have been subjected to numerous attacks from Palestinian militants, such as suicide bombings, rocket fire, stabbings, shootings, and kidnappings, which have killed or injured thousands of civilians and soldiers. The Israelis have also faced wars with neighboring Arab countries, such as Egypt, Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, and Iraq, which have sought to destroy or weaken Israel's existence. The Palestinians have suffered from Israeli military operations, raids, arrests, demolitions, checkpoints, closures, blockades, and restrictions on their movement and access to resources, which have caused widespread casualties, displacement, poverty, and human rights violations. The Palestinians have also faced internal violence and division between rival factions, such as Fatah and Hamas, which have competed for power and legitimacy in the Palestinian territories. Recognition. Both sides seek recognition and acceptance from each other and from the international community for their national aspirations and rights. The Palestinians demand that Israel recognize their right to self-determination and statehood in accordance with international law and resolutions. The Palestinians also seek an end to Israel's occupation and colonization of their land, which they consider illegal and illegitimate. The Israelis demand that the Palestinians recognize Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state within secure and recognized borders. The Israelis also seek an end to Palestinian incitement and violence against them, which they consider a threat to their survival and peace. Thank you for watching this video. Stay tuned for the next video in which we will cover the current situation and challenges of the conflict, as well as the possible ways forward and prospects for peace, and don't forget to pray for the lives of the innocents of both sides. See you next time.